Okay, hello, and this is our lecture from the 30th of March 2020. I hope everybody is doing okay. Uh, Stay at home, don't go anywhere, be safe, okay? It's going to be over soon, hopefully. So, in this lecture, we're going to actually revisit our good old friend systems flowchart. Um, in the previous couple of lectures, what we discussed was um, the general overall structure of the purchasing process. That's the process that pretty much every organization has. And in this process, what happens is our purchasing department orders inventory from the vendors, and the inventory is getting delivered. Then we have to receive that in the warehouse, record the inventory receipt, and later we receive the invoice, record the invoice in the system, and make a payment on the invoice. So in the previous couple of lectures, we looked at how this process is done using the SAP Enterprise Resource Planning system, and also, I believe in the latest lecture, we have created a database structure that can capture all essential parts and pieces of this process, specifically the inventory items, so the products, the purchase orders, and the details of the purchase orders. That means inventory line items that were ordered. Then we discussed how do we record inventory receipts related to these purchase orders, how we record the payments related to the inventory receipts, how the payments are related to bank accounts, and also everything else is related, how pretty much all of these events, purchase orders, inventory receipts, and the payments are linked with suppliers, because all of that is done in reference to a certain specific supplier each time. And also each step is performed by one of our employees, so therefore table employees must be related to pretty much all the events. So today we're going to actually take a look at how we can document that system, and as you probably remember, one of the best ways to create systems documentation is a flowchart. So over here, and I'm going to post both of these Word documents actually on the Scholar after I'm done recording this lecture. So over here on the right side, I have a brief one-page document that describes sequence of interactions that happen as we go through the steps in purchase order process, creation of the purchase order from purchase requisition, and also what happens after the inventory arrives to the warehouse and we have to record the inventory receipt. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start just reading the notations, and as we go we're going to create systems flowchart using the systems flowchart notations that we studied about probably a month, maybe 6 weeks ago. Okay, so let's get going. At the beginning of the process, so the way how the whole purchasing process is being created is we are the requisitioning department manager. So there is a user of the material inside the company that creates a purchase requisition. A representative of the requisitioning department can be a production manager, for example. That's the person who knows what are the needs for the materials are going to be in the immediate future. Logs into the ERP system and enters the purchase requisition data using the mouse and the keyboard. So let's go ahead and get started. In the Microsoft Word, there is a way to actually create flowcharts, because on the Insert tab in the shapes, there are different groups of shapes, as you can see, and one group of shapes actually is related to the flowcharts. So these are the standard flowchart shapes. Alright, so I'm going to use them, and what I did actually is I customized the ribbon. So basically I put this ribbon right here, okay? So, or here in the quick access menu, I have the flowchart. So everything begins with the terminator. Everything begins and ends with the terminator. Whoa. Okay. So the requisitioning department starts creating the purchase requisition when there is a need, right? So there is established. Okay, so let's see. For some reason, the default color here is white. Established need. Okay, so when there is an established need, that's basically the start of the entire process. And what happens after that is production manager logs into the ERP system and start keying in the purchase requisition data using mouse and the keyboard. So that means that this is a let's see, over here in the flowchart items we have this symbol, which is manual input. So I'm gonna have manual input right here, and yeah, something tells me that the default color here again is white. So enter. Whoa. Enter, and default color is white. Alright. Requisition data. Alright. And of course I have to connect these two with the arrow. One leads to another. Just like that. Okay, so what's requisition data? Well, that means that the purchasing manager, the production manager, starts entering items that he or she needs and their specific quantities using the screen, right? Okay, upon submission, so when he or she is done entering the purchase requisition data, upon submission, the computer system edits inputs and records the requisition data into the enterprise database. Okay, so here in the ERP system, swim lane reminder. These columns are called swim lanes in the system's flowchart. So here we have enterprise database. Alright, so let's go ahead and once again, enterprise database. Okay, so the so this is a manual, not the manual process, but keyboard process, right? So when we're entering data into the system using the mouse or the keyboard, it should be sort of a sideways trapezoid symbol. Okay, so when the ERP system creates a record, that should be a computer process, and that is depicted using a rectangle. So therefore, over here, I'm gonna have a rectangle. Alright, like that. No fill and the black. So the computer information, the ERP system edits inputs and records the requisition data. Okay, so edits, edit inputs and record requisition data. Okay, so now I have to connect them, obviously. So there is a connector. Well, I can use just the lines. There you go. And after that, of course, the process has to go into the enterprise database. Alright. But in actuality, let me actually correct that. I should be using double-headed arrow like this. And you will see in a minute why. So I'm going to use double-headed arrow. Let me just make it like that. And take this one out. Alright. The reason for that is the following. Upon submission, the computer edits inputs and records the acquisition data in the enterprise database. So we have arrow pointing to the enterprise database. After that, the newly created acquisition record is read back from the database, and details of the acquisition purchase acquisition are displayed back to the production manager on the screen of the computer. So in other words, what happens is this. There is a program that literally takes the input from the production manager and records that input into the enterprise database. So that creates a new record. After that, this record that was created fraction of the second ago, it's already existing record at that stage, right? So it's being read back from the database and it's displayed in front of the requisition manager. So the same very process reads the data back, that's why we have double-headed arrow, and displays that right here, okay? So, and we have to provide the symbol for the display, which is this one, okay? So this is a display symbol, all right, and requisition details. Alright, so again I have to do the make the font black. Requisition details. Alright, so and these two processes obviously should be connected. So therefore I should have this arrow pointing from computer process to the screen like that. Okay. Let me make it a little bit better looking. Alright. The production manager then reviews the requisition data for accuracy and completeness, and if all is correct, approves that by clicking the approve button. So first the manager does the manual process. So he literally looks at the screen, and the screen displays for him that this is what you just entered. That's what we recorded in the database. Is that accurate? Is that correct? Did you pick the right items? Did you pick the right quantities? So therefore, let's see if I have that symbol. It should be an upside down trapezoid. Where is the upside down trapezoid? Here. I can't find it for some reason. Let's see. Yeah, apparently. Oh, here it is actually. Annual operation. Okay, it just was smaller than I expected it to be. So this is a manual process, right? So I'm going to make it transparent. So manual process would be review. Purchase requisition for completeness and accuracy. Alright, so probably I have to make it bigger. How about that? I'm going to make it wider instead. Okay, and this process obviously should follow from the screen. So I'm going to have to connect the screen right here, like that. Alright. The production manager reviews, and if everything correct, then approves by clicking the approve button. So that means that we have very similar process to this one. You know what? I'm going to reuse the symbols that I already have on the screen. So I'm going to just copy paste what I have and just change the notation on them. Okay. So approve requisition. All right. And again, I'm going to have to connect that with an arrow from the previous process. Okay, so what happens after that is the ERP system updates the requisition record in the database by recording the approval. Approval confirmation is displayed on the screen to the production manager. Alright, so in other words, after the approval happens, we have another computer process. So it's the program, really. So I'm going to copy paste the process right here. Okay, so over here I'm gonna say record approval, and update requisition data. Alright, so I need an arrow, obviously, that connects approval keying process to the computer, links to the computer process, and now I have also, I need a double-headed arrow because of this approval confirmation is displayed on the screen to the production manager. So in other words, we record the approval for the existing purchase acquisition into the database. The database reports back that everything is recorded correctly, and only after that we have to display something for the acquisition manager. So I'm going to insert a double-headed arrow right here that points to the database. Alright, like that. And after that the details are displayed, no, not the details, the confirmation, approval, requisition confirmation, right here, requisition confirmation is displayed for the manager on the screen of the computer. So I need another symbol from here, just like that. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Alright, so we are done with requisitioning manager, I believe. So we've just finished making a picture for the first half of the process. Okay, so let's move on. At the same time, the ERP system reads the details of the approved purchase acquisition as well as the list of approved vendors for the items requested from the vendor's master data. So in other words, once the record was updated in the requisition data within the enterprise database, that triggers another independent process. Actually, what I wanted to point out is that the enterprise databases in general, not necessarily enterprise databases, have a built-in mechanism how to create sequence of actions, so to speak. For example, when you're placing an order on Amazon.com, when you click the button submit the order, you immediately receive in your email confirmation of that order, right? So the email comes in that basically says, dear John, we just received an order from you, order number so and so, and you ordered this and this item. This email is automatically generated by the database, actually. So on a technical level, this is done by something that is part of the database which is called trigger. So each database, such as for example Microsoft SQL Server or Oracle, they have an ability to create I don't even know how to call them, quite frankly, electronic messengers, so to speak, and they're called triggers. So the trigger typically is invoked when the database experiences some changes. For example, let's say a new record was created. That means that a new event was added to the database. So each time when my, for example, purchase order database is being updated, so a new record is created, I may go ahead and say, hey trigger, look at the changes in the database table called purchase orders. If you see a new record event, then go ahead and look up the latest record, read all parts and pieces of this event, what are the items, what are their quantities, and then combine the email and automatically send this email to the email address that was provided, and it's linked with the customer account number. Okay, so in other words, the email that you receive is not generated by somebody, it's generated by databases, and normally it's done by triggers. Okay, so same thing can happen here. Once the record was approved by the requisitioning manager, we can have another process invoked that starts the next part of the purchase requisition process. Okay, so at the same time, ERP system reads after the purchase acquisition was approved and confirmed. ERP system reads the detail of the approved purchase acquisition as well as the list of approved vendors from the vendor's master's data. So in other words, this is a computer process. So I have to go here and copy this process, create another one right here. Okay, so in this process the system read purchase requisition details and also list of approved vendors. List of approved vendors. So that implies that for each of the items entered into the purchase requisition by the purchasing by requisitioning department, like operations manager, in the database we have set up a list of items, a list of vendors that provide us these items. Okay, so we read this list, and this is because it's a read, it's a one direction process, right? So I have to take this arrow and kind of point over here into this process, and once this all this data was read from the database, detailed of the purchase requisition and the list of approved candidate vendors are displayed on the screen of the computer for the purchasing clerk working in the purchasing department. So our next swim lane that's going to be a part of this process is right here, purchasing department. So I need a display symbol in this lane. Alright, right here. We make it bigger. Oh, come on. Alright, for some reason it doesn't want to expand to the right. Okay, so here I'm going to say we are displaying purchase requisition. List of approved vendor candidates. Okay. List of approved vendor candidates. And I have need an arrow pointing to this display. Let's see, this arrow pointing to this display from the computer process. Okay, right here. Okay, so that part's done. The purchasing clerk creates a purchase order from the requisition and enters his choice of vendors, items, prices, and delivery terms using the keyboard, obviously, right? So we're assuming that here on the screen basically there is a button that says this is the purchase order, let's create based on this purchase this is the purchase requisition, let's create based on this purchase requisition a new purchase order. So because it's all done using the keyboard and mouse, I'm gonna have to copy paste the keying process, keyboard process right here. Okay, let me make it bigger, wider. Alright, so create a purchase order, and we agreed on class to abbreviate purchase order PO, and also select and enter vendors, prices, and terms, delivery terms, that is, right? For example, shipment, desired shipment date. Okay, so the arrow should connect obviously this screen to this keyboard process right here. Okay, so after that what happens is when it's done, he clicks the submit button and the ERP system records a new purchase order in the corporate database. So therefore I need another process right here. So I'm just going to copy paste the existing one. So copy and paste. No, not this. Alright. Let me move a boundary of my process a little bit, of the computer process. Okay. So here I'm gonna say record a new PO. And of course, there should be an arrow linking these two symbols. So over here, I'm going to have an arrow like that. Okay. So now what I need really is, let's kind of read the next step, right, over here. After that, the newly created purchase order record is read back from the database and displayed for the purchasing clerk. So it's the same kind of situation that we have right here, okay? We record requisition data, and we immediately read the requisition data and display it. So same happens over here. Once the purchasing clerk in the purchase department picked the right vendors, prices, and terms, whatever they need, they click submit button. The process creates a record, and it immediately says, okay, now it's an existing record. Dear database, please give me back the data, whatever you recorded. And I'm going to show the data, the purchase order, to the person in the purchasing department for them to verify again, is everything correct. So it's the same process as we actually went through right here, okay? And the idea behind this, some people may say, well, what's the big deal, right? I picked the prices, I picked the vendors, I picked everything. So just save it in the database and let's be done with that. No, it's done for a good reason. People make mistakes. I can key in the wrong item. I can pick the wrong supplier. I can mistype the price. So therefore, this is the chance that system provides for the human that interacts with the computer to verify. Again, this is for completeness and accuracy, for verification purposes. So this way, we're making less mistakes, and it's just one of the internal controls, believe it or not. Remember, we discussed internal controls. These are processes, policies and procedures that are put in place in order to make sure that inventory or data or cash are not lost or stolen. So therefore, the less what can happen, for example, if I pick the wrong vendor. At the end of this process, the purchase order will be transmitted to the vendor. And if I pick the wrong item, then the item will come to my warehouse. It will be rejected at my receiving dock. It will be sent back. That means additional expense. So therefore, this is just an internal control to verify that likelihood of something like that happening is not big. So it boils down to the efficiency at the end of the day. All right. So I'm going to have a bottom line two-headed arrow that connects my database. Right. I record this new created purchase order to the database and immediately read it back. And after that, it is displayed to the purchasing clerk. So I have the same display symbol right here. Alright. Display symbol. But this time around, it's not requisition details, it's the purchase order details. And of course, I need an arrow connecting them. So there should be an arrow linking these two symbols right here. Okay. Purchasing clerk verifies the purchase order accuracy and completeness. So it's pretty much the same process right here. It's done manually. Well, not manually, visually, but it's the same symbol. It's the manual process. Verifies accuracy and completeness and clicks the approve button. So therefore, here I'm going to copy that. Oops, I mean to move that. Alright, so I'm going to copy paste the same exact process right here. Review purchase order PO for completeness and accuracy, and of course I need to link these two display and this manual process. Okay, and once that's done, click the approved button. So therefore we need another keyboarding process. So I'm gonna copy paste. No, that's not the one. Alright, copy and paste this one right here. Alright, approve PO. Okay, and what happens after that is well, First I need to link them. Okay. The ERP system updates the purchase order record in the corporate database and displays the purchase order approval message on the screen to the purchasing clerk. So I'm gonna have to create another computer process here because it's really a program. It's a computerized process. And let me make it a little bigger. Okay. So here I'm gonna say record purchase order approval. And of course I need an arrow that links my keying process with this. Right? But let's see what happens after that. Once the purchase order approval was recorded, well, one thing is I have to record it in the database, right? But at the same time, I should convert the purchase order at the same time. ERP converts a purchase order into the electronic format, such as electronic data interchange, encrypts that, and transmits that electronically to the vendor via the network, such as the internet. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to have also, again, a double-headed arrow, okay, between the database and my computer process. Okay, so the reason for that is I approve PO. So PO was already recorded, right? I did that on the previous step. So now what I'm doing is I'm saying, yes, somebody, human being, reviewed that record that was created, and no errors were found. Everything looks fine. So therefore, I submit this purchase order number so and so is approved. So after that, the computer program should tell the database to update this record and say, not only this purchase order was created, but now it's approved, it's been reviewed, it's accurate, it's complete, let's proceed. And after that, in order for me to create a PO in the electronic form, I have to read back the details of that purchase order. Items, their quantities, the terms and conditions, who are the selected vendors, all of that information. That's why I have double-headed arrow. So, but one thing is, of course, I didn't do yet, is this, right? Display purchase order approval message on the screen for the purchasing clerk. So, therefore, I'm going to have to take this one, the message, the display. So, PO approval screen. Okay, or I can say confirmation. PO approval confirmation screen. Alright. And of course I need the symbol. I need the arrow right here. But after that, I'm going to say read purchase order from the database. Convert the purchase order in the electronic format in the EDI. So convert into electronic data interchange format, encrypt, and transmit to the vendor. Okay, so a lot of things here. Let's discuss them. What are they? First of all, in this example, we're kind of assuming that this is a big company with ERP systems. Okay, in class we discussed that ERP systems are great. They can manage the entire system, the entire company business from one centralized database. Well, they're also expensive. That means that small companies and oftentimes even medium companies cannot afford such systems. So therefore, we're kind of assuming that this is maybe medium, but likely large corporation, okay, that has a lot of processes automated. And a lot of times, what happens, in order for the enterprise resource planning system to actually deliver the efficiencies to the company, what's required oftentimes is that the um, vendors, suppliers, uh, somehow connect to the enterprise resource planning system. I'll give you a practical example. In Virginia Beach, there is a company called Stihl USA. It's a German company, and they're probably very well known, probably the best known for manufacturing of chainsaw and other power tools, such as grass trimmers, uh, bush trimmers, the leaf blowers, etc., etc. So the company operating in Virginia Beach runs from the ERP system, in fact from SAP, but the way how they distribute, for example, the product is through the 11, I believe they have 11 big distributors. About half of them, 5 or 6, I don't remember exactly how many, they own. So it's an independently operated distribution company. So it's basically a large distribution warehouse that places electronic orders with the manufacturer located in the Virginia Beach. And the manufacturer in Virginia Beach loads the orders into trucks, and the trucks are being delivered to the regional warehouses, and from there they're distributed to smaller stores such as Ace Hardware and so on and so forth. But the point of the story is this. The half of the distributors owned by Stihl USA, because even though they're legally different entities from Stihl USA, they're still 100% subsidiaries. These companies, subsidiary companies, are required to also run from SAP system and be electronically integrated into the ERP system of the corporation Stihl USA in Virginia Beach. So why is that done? Well, this is done so that Stihl USA does not deal with any paperwork. They don't have to wait on orders to be delivered by mail or by fax. The purchasing clerk. So from the distributor standpoint, Stihl USA in Virginia Beach is a vendor, supplier. So and that's exactly what happens pretty much. Okay, purchasing clerk in the purchase department of the distributor creates the purchase order, and purchase order is created, and after that it's electronically transmitted to the corporate to the vendor, to the supplier, which is the Stihl USA. So there is no paperwork involved, and that's precisely what's shown in this process. After the approval for the purchase order is recorded, the PO is read, converted into the electronic format, encrypted. Encryption basically is the process of conversion of the text into the unreadable mess of characters, and after that this message is transmitted to the vendors. So essentially that's how the purchase orders are submitted electronically. It's not magic. It happens through the electronic over the wire, over the internet, quite literally. It's sent as the file from the ordering company to the supplying company. Okay, but of course, because it's private data, private information, we don't want somebody to intercept that and read what's going on. It has to be encrypted. So therefore, the text of the purchase order, specifically who are the vendors, what items do we order, how much per item, how many units, what are the delivery terms, all of that has to be encoded or encrypted. So of course on the receiving end the message is received and it's decrypted, so it's converted back into the original text. But over the internet, which is public network really, what we transmit is just a mess of characters, and if somebody will intercept that, there is a really good chance they will not be able to understand what's inside this message. Okay, so once we converted the purchase order to the electronic format, we have to communicate that, send it to the vendor, right? So, and the vendor is external. So note also that all these three lanes, swim lanes, requisitioning department, ERP systems, and purchasing department, they're all part of the same company. But the vendor is not. So therefore, vendor is kind of where the process stops, right? We don't have any visibility into what's going on in the vendor. So therefore, we have to use the terminator. So this is where the process stops. Okay. So here our destination is really vendor. All right, and we have to send this electronically. So I'm just curious if there is a symbol for the, yeah. So I believe this is the right symbol to use. Electronic transmission in the system's flowchart notations looks like squiggly line, squiggly arrow. I'm not sure I can do that actually with let's see, let me try at least. Yeah, that looks like it. Maybe I can add more points. Typically can add more points. No. Alright, let me undo that. And let me just leave it like that. Okay, so I'm not gonna be very fancy or creative here. I'm just gonna take this symbol and use that. Okay. Just like that. Alright, so that will indicate electronic transmission. Okay, so that pretty much concludes the first part of our process, right? And just as a reminder, what we did discuss in class is this is a multi-step process, which is pretty standardized. It all starts with purchase requisition, as you can see. It's right, this part right here, requisitioning department. Then it moves to the purchasing department. These are the people who take purchase requisition, convert it into the PO, but as we can see, it's all done in the B corporation through the use of enterprise resource planning systems. Then the next step actually is the PO went out to vendor, and we don't know what's going on with the vendor. So we have to wait until the goods show up, and the next thing that we have to do is inventory receipt right here. But I think I need a special symbol for the inventory receipt, and quite frankly I don't see that symbol right here. So what I'm going to do is I will stop this portion of the video at that point, and I will create a custom symbol for Word, and then I will record the second part where we will discuss what happens in the warehouse on the receiving dock when the inventory comes in. Okay, so to be continued.